Divine Rising New Earth, welcome back to the show. My name is Calista.
I'm Anneka.
So you want to know how to open your third eye.
I heard that you want to know how to activate your pineal gland.
You've come to the right place.
A very important integral part of the culture here at Divine Rising New Earth is third eye open. So no matter what level you are at with your third eye, we will tell you how to get to the next level.
What is the third eye?
I mean, it's essentially the pineal gland, this spiritual eye. If with your physical eyes you're being able to grok things on the third dimensional physical level, your third eye is what is connected to all of the information of the universe. People often correlate it to this area, just like up and between the brows.
It is one of the chakras. In the chakra system, there are 7 main chakras. The root, the sacral, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. And the third eye is related to your intuition, and it is the pineal gland in the brain. One thing that I have been getting into is learning more about the cerebrospinal fluid, which is this fluid that exists like in the spinal column from the base of the spine all the way up into the brain. And that's the fluid that like surrounds the brain inside the skull. And basically what it means to open your third eye is to get that cerebrospinal fluid moving and flowing up the spinal column into the third ventricle of the brain, which is touching the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, and get that kind of activated. In my understanding, that is the basic physical body correlation to opening and activating your third eye, which is also a very spiritual process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, that it is a chakra, and each of the chakras, like Calista was saying, like they have a physical correlation. Our root chakra is kind of connected to like all of the base parts of our body, and then like the sacral chakra is connected to all our reproductive organs, and then our solar plexus is really connected to like our navel. Or if there are some sciences where it's like the navel is a chakra, and then the solar plexus actually connects the heart and the navel. And then the heart, it's, connected to the actual organ of your heart. The throat is often connected to, I think it's like the thyroid gland and like maybe like the thymus gland. Mm-hmm. And the third eye, I believe, is connected to the pineal gland. It might also be associated with the pituitary. The pituitary is actually known as the master gland, so it has command over all the other glands in the body. And then, there's the crown chakra, which is known as like the gateway between like you and the heavenly realms. And then there are chakras even farther up. But the third eye is when people talk about being intuitive or increasing your intuition, that is what is so associated with the actual functioning of the energy center that is the third eye, and with the gland that is the pineal gland, because intuition is basically the ability to see beyond just like the information that's in front of you and understand something by just receiving like more of a subtle awareness. You can perceive things beyond just like linear time space. You can perceive things beyond just the clues that you have either like right in front of you or what you've gathered up to this life so far. Like if you work with the intuition, you're pretty familiar with it, and the more that you follow it, the more it can kind of increase. This is like another way to almost increase the power of the third eye. But for those who are less familiar with working with these energies, it's oftentimes when you know something but you don't know why you necessarily know it. It's like you're receiving information that is almost like from a higher frequency space, and it's not as dense, and that is you being able to see like with your spiritual eye. And a lot of times there will be like spiritual photos or depictions where people have an eye open right here, and it's symbolic of this third eye. Or even like, I think on our dollar, isn't there like a pyramid with an eye on it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the cerebral spinal fluid is very connected because the cerebral spinal fluid actually feeds and activates all the glands in our bodies and all of the chakras. But getting it up to the third eye and like the crown takes the most effort, I would say, specifically because we live on a planet with gravity. And so to like pull it all the way up takes some effort. One of the teachings in Kundalini yoga is that every human has the capacity to be like so intuitive. It's like your birthright. It's like a God-given gift, but it will oftentimes lay dormant within you unless you activate it, because the latent potential is there. And then whether you actually like do the effort to, you know, rise the energy, rise the Kundalini, rise the cerebral spinal fluid, and open it up and activate it is up to you. Some people already, I think, come into this life with different levels of its activation than others. You know, some people come in like fully awake, though that is a little bit more rare. But it is, I think it's associated with, when people talk about like having a sixth sense, oftentimes they'll be referencing that intuitive sight that comes from that energy center.
It's your intuition, your sixth sense, your subtle sight, your inner knowing. And the modern lifestyle as well, with more sitting, more looking at the phones and the laptops and whatnot, it does affect the posture, especially that connection like in the neck. That can kind of prevent the clear, straight channel for the cerebrospinal fluid to flow up from the lower parts of the spine into the head. And I think there's an emphasis in our culture on outsourcing the intuition and the inner knowing and always citing your sources and having proof. So when it comes to how do I open my third eye, those are like definitely the two angles that I would approach it from, both the physical and the spiritual. The physical is strengthening your back, moving your spine, cat-cows, practicing breath work, practicing these yogic locks where you lock the pelvic floor, you lock the abdominal muscles, you focus the awareness on the top of your head, and you can kind of squeeze and channel the cerebrospinal fluid up the spine to the top of the head, practicing getting the fluid in your spine and your brain moving and flowing. It's really interesting that we are discovering these things scientifically, and that the best methods for moving the cerebrospinal fluid are these spiritual practices that have been like around for hundreds and hundreds or thousands of years. So from the more energetic internal perspective, it is trusting yourself, listening to yourself, asking yourself questions. How do you feel? What do you think? What do you know? What did you know when you were a kid before you like learned otherwise? I think that was a major catalyst for me in practicing trusting and relying on my intuition, was just the pain of not trusting it for whatever reason, and then finding out it was right. Like we've all had that experience of we should have trusted ourselves, and that is the example of the truth of your intuition. So it's just cultivating that self-trust as well as increasing your awareness and your practice of the movement of this cerebral spinal fluid, the Kundalini energy, life force energy. In our previous episode, it was actually our first video episode, New Earth Now on video. We talked about how in the New Earth, having your third eye open, perceiving with your subtle senses is going to be very key. And part of that is perceiving the physical body as one facet of your energy body. And I mentioned how I've been thinking of my physical body spine first, because the spine is such a potent central channel of all these like energetic vertices and vortices. And this is a big part of that. The fact that that column is the location of the cerebrospinal fluid. That's how it feeds all the chakras. So in the new earth, I think this understanding of the body and of health holistically is going to emphasize a lot more the cerebrospinal fluid, its movement, and spine health in general.
Absolutely. People say that, by people, I mean, I know Paramahansa Yogananda said this, who are Autobiography of a Yogi. I'm sure he wasn't the first, but that's just me citing the source I read it from, that God lives in the spine. So it's not some like force out there, but it is this energy within you, and you can activate that awareness simply by opening up your spine, getting your cerebral spinal fluid moving. And people talk about the Kundalini energy, which is like this spiral at the base of your spine of this God force, this life force, this creative energy, that when you start to work with the spine more, work with your breath more, and meditation, all these things, whatever, you know, practices resonate with you, yoga, Kundalini yoga, that energy is able to rise. But it becomes this like flow, just like with the cerebral spinal fluid. And it's also said that the glands are the guardians of the health. So the glands are essentially what keep us young, what keep us glowing, what keep us radiant, what keep us healthy, what keep us vital. And what feeds the glands is that cerebral spinal fluid moving up and down, because it's causing all of the glands to secrete. And those secretions are what keep our vitality going. And it's just connected to also the frequency and the energy that's keeping, the chakras spinning and expanding and healthy. So like Calista was saying, that the cerebral spinal fluid and the spine is going to become so much more prevalent in health as we move forward into the new earth. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think that it's honestly like the best preventative healthcare, I think, to like have a practice that like keeps your spine healthy, keeps that energy moving. And I think so many symptoms that are present in our society today are from like a lack of the healthy movement of the energy flow within us, and the reflection of like a lack of a healthy movement of the cerebral spinal fluid within us. And it is so true that so much of our modern lifestyle almost pushes us into like an opposite state, making our spine like not be in full alignment, or really enticing us to rely on our physical senses or data that somebody else has collected to give us the information that we need to determine what we need to determine. But there is this like absolute genius within you that can only come forth when you tune into it, when you activate your own creative potential and you start to tune into the information that you're getting through your own channel. Like you keep the channel open, you keep the channel active, and then you start to see what comes through.
So true. And the glands regulate the hormones.
Yes.
And I think in the new earth, each person masters their internal balance of divine feminine and masculine energy. That said, for women especially, and the female body, there's so much information recently entering the mainstream about hormones and our menstrual cycle, and this information wasn't previously known, and what was more the mainstream health information actually related more to male bodies. And then there's also the common concept of the women's intuition, the female intuition, the mother's intuition. And I think that just this like holistic understanding of the glands, the hormones, the intuition is really beautiful, the way that our consciousness is expanding in the understanding of these topics. And I feel like they're all really connected, how women are reconnecting to their cycles through their hormones, through their glands, and it connects them more to their inner knowing and their intuition. And if you are a woman or have like a womb, that is also a tip. A lot of schools of thought think of the womb as a separate intelligent being. So as women, we are in co-creation with our wombs, and our wombs can be a really potent source of intuitive wisdom. And that's another thing about the modern culture to keep in mind is the constant noise and the constant news and the constant information. And the intuitive voice is like a whisper at first. So it helps a lot to quiet the noise and be quiet and be still. Listen to yourself, listen to your body and your heart, your womb, whatever resonates with you. And the last thing that was coming to mind is if you are someone who is a more experienced meditator, so the location of like the third ventricle, pineal gland, pituitary gland in the brain is right around, like Anneka was saying, if you go right above your ears, halfway, like between the width of them, straight into the center of your skull, and then straight back from between your eyebrows, that intersection is basically the third ventricle where this cerebrospinal fluid like collects in between the pineal and the pituitary glands. And the more advanced you get in meditation, you can practice keeping your eye gaze in one place and channeling your awareness there. And then as you master that, you can keep your eye gaze in one place and channel your awareness elsewhere. So if you are to keep your eye gaze up in between your eyebrows in the center of your forehead with your eyes closed, you can still keep your awareness on the top of your head and channel the Kundalini energy, cerebrospinal fluid all the way up, but you can see a little glowing indigo dot. And all the chakras are associated with a part of the frequency bandwidth that associates with a color, and the third eye is associated with the indigo frequency. And I've heard the third eye referred to as the blue pearl, where if you become very meditative and focus your eyes up and in on the third eye inside your forehead, you can see and focus on like this little indigo glowing pearl. So that is also like when we say the third eye, your chakra, your pineal gland, it is also the blue pearl.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's beautiful. That's cool. There are like a few Kundalini meditations where they have you visualize a blue pearl. But yeah, meditation. I mean, that's huge because it is kind of a training of stopping looking only right outside, right in front of you for the information you need to come up with, you know, whatever decision, idea, plan that you need to, and to pull your senses inward and to start to rely on your inward sense or any of like the cosmic information that you're receiving that's beyond the physical eyes and the physical 3D around you. It's like a practice. So the more that you're meditating, the more that you're drawing your senses inward and you're retracting them from the physical world, the more easily you'll be able to tune into the subtle energies. And also the stronger your third eye gets, essentially, the more that you meditate. And like Calista was saying, you can hold your eye gaze up here because where attention goes, energy flows. So if you're holding it at this physical location that is associated with this third ventricle and the pineal and pituitary gland, you're going to be feeding energy into that area, which will help with its activation. And then another way to actually bring it in activation to your third eye and kind of decalcify and get rid of any stuckness you might have in this region is to gaze at the tip of the nose. And oftentimes when people first start doing this, it will feel a little bit difficult. It can hurt. It can feel just like a little bit tight.
Heavy.
But the longer that you do it, it will like start to clear, and then it'll be like no problem. And that's like kind of the physical sensation of lifting the veil of sight of the third eye. also, there are things that we consume in our society that actually physically block it from opening as much as it could. People talk about the calcification of the pineal gland, and that actually is like a calcification that comes over it based upon things
The fluoride in the
yeah.
tap water. You want to filter the fluoride out of your tap water if you want to or open your third eye, just to keep it real.
100%, 100%. And there are a lot more things you can Google how to decalcify your pineal gland, and it is very practical. It'll tell you like the physical things that like leave debris and like calcify this gland, and then ways that you can kind of start to loosen it and open it.
And this is not medical advice, but this is just what we do. Like, we have this brand of pitcher that specifically filters out fluoride. So yeah, we would recommend that. Yeah.
We'll put it in the show notes. It is, what's it called?
Clearly filtered.
Clearly filtered. If we forget, that's what it's called. You can look it up. And so that's very important, the kind of water that you drink. And then there are a bunch of other things as well that can help to decalcify it. And, the blue light. That's what I was trying to remember. So blue light actually, especially after the sun sets and before the sun rises, also gets in the way of that full third eye opening. It's so funny. The yogis like really had it down to such a science. Like, yoga is the science of awakening to God consciousness and coming back into union with the fullness of that which you actually are, and like being able to live from that awareness in human form. And so a lot of what they did was like very practical. If you think of like anything that they do, there is an explanation behind it and there is a reason for it. And one of the things that the yogis would do is get up before the sun rises to practice, because the angle of the sun hitting the earth is like the most potent energy there is to like receive more subtle spiritual information. And also it's like when the subconscious is most active, so you can clear out the most. And it also is when you have the biggest potential to positively impact the functioning of the glands, the chakras, all of this stuff. It's like known as this like ambrosial hour that's like really potent for doing the spiritual work. And one of the things that they would do is, well, back in the day, you know, the blue light wasn't a problem, but like candle light or any sort of red light is positive during that time, and just in general for opening up this space versus blue light. So if you are someone who gets up early to meditate, or, you know, before you're going to bed, right when you wake up, it's good to have some sort of red light. They used to meditate with a candle flame too that encourages that opening as well. So there are very practical ways. And then there's also more energetic awareness, attention practices that you can do to start to activate that space more and more. But I would say for me with the cerebrospinal fluid, the biggest positive to having that flowing is you will just start to feel so much better, because in a place of stagnancy, that's where like disease grows. But in a place of like flowing movement, that's where, you know, there is no disease. It's like healthy and it's vital. And I think it's like, you know, if a petri dish is really still, or like there's like a pond and like a ton of stuff grows, versus there being like moving, swirling water, and it's a lot more of like a cleaner, more pure environment. It's the same way with our bodies. It's like once you start to get that spinal fluid moving, you'll just start to get this flood of life force energy through all of you. Your glands are functioning better. You honestly start to look better. There are so many positives to it. And I think the opening of the third eye is almost just like an effect of that happening. And if you're like, oh, what are the brass tacks? Like how to do it? In Kundalini yoga, they do cat-cow at the beginning of every practice, which is like you're on your hands and your knees and you inhale, drop the belly, you lift up the third eye, and then you exhale chin to chest. We can all put a video in the show notes so that you can actually see, but that's like a really quick way to do it. Inhale, exhale, and you're like flexing the spine. What were the ways that you found to be really accessible and approachable?
Well, I think we mentioned some throughout the episode. I also just would say that the third eye and the crown chakra, I remember those are such like gateway to spirituality concepts. Like you hear about the third eye and the crown chakra and stuff like that. At least I did when I was just barely scratching the surface of like new age thought and spirituality and the spiritual sciences. And these types of subtle body metaphysics and things like that. And one thing that I noticed and heard and learned along my journey is that these concepts of like spiritual awakening and connecting to God and having the sixth sense and like being psychic are like very attractive. It's like transcending and ascending, like very attractive even to people who have not yet begun their spiritual journey from sometimes like just a fantastical or even like escapist viewpoint. And people will always advise to start healing your root chakra first and basically heal and activate your chakras from the bottom up, because if you are someone with a very activated and open crown and third eye chakra with very closed down or blocked or unhealthy root and sacral chakra, that's how you get the types of behaviors that we refer to as like schizophrenic and psychotic and stuff like that. So once you are in a place where you are safe in yourself, safe in your body, have a relatively healthy process of processing and feeling your emotions and a relatively healthy level of self-esteem and so on and so forth, then this is actually where you do get into the fun, exciting, mystical, crazy, spiritual stuff of knowing things that there would be no possible explanation for, having abilities come online like clairvoyant abilities or being able to see the future in your dreams or have these telepathic experiences. And that is the result of opening your third eye and learning to trust your intuition, is you start to experience this knowing that is so supernatural in a way and so far beyond what we could ever access with our other five senses and the physical evidence and other people's stories or data or anything like that. So the affirmation that I like for the third eye that I learned is I honor my intuition, I accept my path, I am healing mind, body, and spirit. So if you just want to repeat that affirmation, meditate and try to focus your eyes at the third eye, do the cat-cows, the spinal movements, even just movement in general, working on your posture. I do push-ups for my posture and learning more about your hormones, learning more about your glands. Maybe you want to filter your water. I would recommend taking just one or two of the things that really resonated with you the most in this episode and do like a deep dive on those concepts and see where that gets you. I bet it would be super transformative. That's how I like to go about things sometimes.
Yeah, very good tip. I guess the final note would just be that, you know, as fun and mystical as opening and activating your third eye can seem, you know, I used to be like, oh my God, am I going to be able to like see other beings and other entities? And if I don't, does that mean my third eye isn't open? And all of these things. And it's very different for everyone. Some people, like, you come in with that kind of like structure within you where that is what is going to be your experience as your third eye starts to open. For some people, it'll just be like, you know, a lot more intuition, you know exactly what next step to take. It can be so many different levels. So it's just like, always be patient and trust the process. And the practical like impetus for raising your spiritual energy and activating these higher centers is because, first of all, as we collectively ascend, we are moving to the place where we're going to be functioning on like through all of our chakras simultaneously, like everybody, as we start to collectively ascend. And then we're going to start like getting access to even there's more than 7 chakras. Mm-hmm. And our awareness is going to expand as we ascend through higher dimensions. But essentially these activations actually just so practically help you live your life better, because if you can intuitively sense what decision is going to get you to where like your soul needs you to go faster, for reasons beyond, you know, a decision that you might make just upon the information in front of you. Like, you're going to save yourself so much more time. You're going to be able to actualize, what you came here to do much more quickly. And it becomes like a much more fulfilling and magical journey because it all ties together in a way that you could not have planned just using your logical mind. They say that your mind should be of service to the intuition. So you get these intuitive hits. And then, like, if you need to create some logical plan of, use logic to execute that, that is the ideal way to use the mind, is in service to the intuition, which is connection to our soul, which is in connection to all things. So not only are you benefiting you, but your intuition is connected to all of life. So the decisions that you make from that intuitive space are going to be decisions that are for the good of all beings and for the good of the planet. And when you think about, oh my gosh, how are we going to get our planet? Like, how are we going to turn things around? It seems so impossible just from the perspective of the logical mind. But if we were all connected to our intuition, we would all know what to do to, like, execute this higher plan as, like, all these separate pieces. But, like, that intuition is what connects us to the greater source and the greater good of all things. So, like, there could be this massive, incredible plan from, like, this higher awareness that can see how everything could work perfectly together. And if we're all vertically synced up to, like, our sole source of information, but, like, we're just getting the part that's relevant to us and we take care of that, then that's going to all add up to us all being able to create this new earth in a way that we never could have even conceived would have been possible. And those little things happen in our lives on a micro scale often, where we're like, oh my God, I never could have conceived that this could turn out so great, or like that piece moves there and then this piece moves there and then it all came together, but I was just following my intuition and it led that to happen. That can happen on a macro scale when we're all living from this intuitive space. So it's definitely really good work to do that not only benefits the individual, but then eventually the collective.
100%. And if you've ever seen that documentary, Fantastic Fungi, it is almost like the mycelium, where they have this network of instant communication across thousands of square miles. And it's almost like the internet was like this stepping stone to that, of like this whole network connecting humanity and our ability to communicate and share information. But to link in to that almost like mycelial spiritual network and come online in that way is to link into your intuitive knowing and open up your channel to like that divine flow of information that Anneka is talking about. And
it's almost like being a healthy functioning cell versus being a cancerous cell, because the healthy functioning cell knows it's part of the whole body and like what its role is, versus like the cancerous cell doesn't realize it's like connected to the whole thing. Right. So it kind of tries to multiply on its own and like do its own thing, and then that like wreaks havoc on the body.
It doesn't realize it's part of a bigger picture. And there's this idea of the keepers of the flame, which we can get into more in a future episode. But if you're curious to look into it on your own, or if you're already familiar, I think it relates to this idea of those of us who hold this like sacred wisdom and this innate desire to preserve and share it are like little candle flames, where as long as there is one of us, there is like hope, because a flame can always light another one. And I think coming online to this intuitive network and being this aware, like connected part of the whole with like this knowledge and embodying it is to like add your little candle flame to this beautiful light grid of keepers of the flame, building the new earth and these golden light cities in the 5D.
That's that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we love you.
And we'll see you next time. Until then, flourish, and hopefully you learned something about how to open your third eye.